Good morning. For those of you who are here for the very first time, and for those of you who've been here 100 times, let me be really clear with you today. I, as the pastor of the Point, have an ulterior motive and agenda for your life. I'll just put it out there. I desire nothing more for you than that you would find a life with Jesus, a life that leads you day by day closer into His love, and in turn, over the course of your life with Him, that you would become a person more and more of love, capable of loving yourself and others as He has loved you, capable of loving with everything in you, that you may even love your enemies and those who disagree with you. It is my hope in everything we do that this is the life you would find. Unfortunately, our English language makes this pursuit a little complicated at times. And here's why. What is love? If your aim is to become a person of love as you draw near to the love of God, what exactly is love? In English, we use love interchangeably with a whole bunch of other words that may not mean the same thing. I love food, though I often don't actually take time to enjoy it. I just eat it for substance and then move on. I love football, though my team can lose or start to lose, and my love changes quickly. Thankfully, not yesterday. I love a whole lot of things, including my children and my wife. But none of those loves are the same. As we seek to become people of love, to grow with Jesus, to become more like Him in who we are and what we do, it's helpful to understand what is love, that we can know what we're aiming at. In Greek, which most of the New Testament was written in, there's actually 4 different words to describe love. So over the course of the next 4 weeks, we're going to look at the 4 different types of loves, what they are, what they mean for us today, and how we begin to live out this love in our everyday life. Today we begin with perhaps the most common that every one of us in some way is familiar with, even if we've never heard this Greek word and have no idea this concept. All right, you ready for it? Week 1, here we go. The first Greek type of love we're going to talk about is called Storge. No, that's not a typo. It's not supposed to say storage, as some people thought earlier this morning. Storge is the first and most common type of love in Greek. And this love is really simple. It's just a deep affection similar to that of a parent for a child or a child for a parent. In some translations, it will understand Storge to be more like familial love, the love of any family member, almost like the love of a brother. But next week, we're going to get into love of a brother or a friend that often most people interpret as brother. So to be less confusing, let me just say this is like the love of a close family member, somebody near you. Now, let me unpack that for a little bit. When I was a little kid, maybe 9 or 10, and I was just beginning to be aware that the world was filled with women and girls, and they were special and different than I was. And it was kind of fun. I remember my first crush, this girl that I was wildly in love with, or so I thought. And I thought in the most meaningful way, Dad, I need to know, what is love? And my dad said to me the most obnoxious thing he could have said. He said, when you know, you know. But I don't know if I know. Do I know? I think I love this girl. Turns out she didn't really know who I was in a town of like 200 where everybody knew everybody. She had no idea who I was. It was certainly not love in any way possible. But I thought maybe. And then I became a teenager a little bit later, and I had my first real girlfriend. And I was certain I loved her. And boy, was I immature and had no idea what I was doing. I was so convinced I was in love. But everybody else was like, you just think she's cute, which was also true. Then I had kids. Well, before that, I got married, and that was a very different kind of love. And I had kids, and I discovered a love that I can't even explain. Like, how many of you know this? No parent has an ugly child, but some children are ugly. Like, if you've ever seen a newborn baby, they don't always look great, but your kid is the most adorable, I promise, every time. There's something that wells up within you when you find out you're going to have a baby. And it is fear. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I don't have any money. And what's this going to look like? And it is joy. This is so exciting. And it is a whole lot of anxiety. What if and what then? But there's something that happens no matter what. There is a bond that is created. And you did nothing to create that bond. It's just there. One way of thinking of this familial love is kind of the love we have for the comfortable, for the normal, the things that seem like they just always have been, and we don't actually know why. These old things that have always been there, like maybe you have the same mailman who's delivered your mail for years and years and years. And you don't even necessarily know their name, but every time you see that mail truck coming down the street, you're just like, our mailman's here. I should get to know his name. You just have this like deep affection for somebody you don't even know. Or same could be true for the barista who serves you coffee every day, and maybe you know their name, and you've never gone any deeper with that relationship, but you are so grateful and filled with joy simply because, once again, they're bringing you caffeine. And life will be okay. These familiar faces that become so normal and so accustomed to, that it's like they've always been there. And most of the time, these types of relationships, we don't realize the depth of the meaning until they're gone. It's not until we get to the coffee shop and they're no longer there. It's not until we get to the hospital and the doctor or the nurse we've seen 100 times has left that job that we begin to realize we actually cared for that person more than we thought we did. And this isn't some profound, deep love like I will lay down my life for you, though maybe you will. Generally, it's just a state of care, noticing and observing and appreciating somebody else in the same way that my kids love one another. They appreciate one another sometimes, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. Storge is as this most simple, most common, most prevalent kind of love, sadly, only mentioned in the Bible 3 times. And here's how this Greek word works. It's only mentioned 3 times, but never by itself. You see, the ancient Greeks took this type of love to be so prevalent and so common, they rarely talked about it because they just assumed this is what we all have. If you relate to anybody, there's some kind of connection and relationship there that is meaningful. And oftentimes, affection always has 2 types of love wrapped up within this one. There is a need and a gift. My child loves me. All 3 of them love me because they need from me something. They need food on the table, or they need new clothes or clothes to be washed, or they need a whole bunch, so they love me, and there's something they expect in return. But also, I love them. I love to give to them because that's a joy. Even when I give to them food and they don't eat it, and I get angry, and then they complain because it didn't taste good, and they just want something else, and then I get angry. My love is never perfect. But there's this reality that there's a part of me that actually needs to be needed, and there's a part of you that probably needs to be needed as well. And there's this weird paradox between the gift and the need that when this affection lives within us, we rarely notice which one we're living in. Am I giving of myself or am I getting from the other? Either way, we find ourselves a little bit more fulfilled in the relationship. And hopefully, in a healthy context, there's both give and take. There's needs that we have met from others and we are able to meet their needs. And hopefully it's not too much on the one side or the other, because that can lean into some really unhealthy emotional dependence or demand for the other. But assuming we're all healthy, within this type of love, it was so commonly assumed that we all knew it and understood it in the ancient Greek world that they didn't write about it much in the Bible. It shows up in three places. 2 of the places it shows up in the negative. It shows up as not love, and is often translated as hatefulness. We all know what hatefulness feels like. That disdain from another for nothing we've done, or maybe because we have done, the grudge they hold, the desire for vengeance. We know the feeling of hatefulness in ourselves when we hate another. and we celebrate their destruction, it often brings us down as well. But the one time that it's used in the positive is found in Romans chapter 12. And that's where we're going to read today, where we're going to focus on for this one. Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 9. This is on page 1183 if you want to use those blue Bibles in the pews in front of you. Along the walls upstairs, you can grab one of those if you'd like. Feel free to use your phone as well, or your own Bible. Romans chapter 12. And just a little caveat, the first 11 chapters of Romans, Paul is spelling out the reality of our salvation. And oftentimes we think of salvation as a conversion moment, a moment when suddenly we believe in Jesus and now everything's better. But the salvation that Paul lays out is not a moment in time, but a perpetual process in which God, through His Son, is bringing healing or salve, ointment, to this broken world. And with this process of healing that we know one day will be complete, but is not yet, Paul then in chapter 12 begins to describe how do we live on this journey as these people on a process of becoming more like who we were made to be from the beginning. Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 9. Let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. This word shows up here. Storge comes in this very second verse, verse 10. Love one another with brotherly affection. Some translations translate that a little differently, but the brotherly affection is where Storge shows up. And I mentioned it doesn't show up by itself. I don't know why. It's actually in this one place, the only place where it shows up in the positive in Scripture is combined with next week's type of love, phileo, which maybe you're familiar with. You've heard of the city Philadelphia. It gets their name from what we're going to talk about next week. But these two smashed together is this level of love that is like brothers. Anybody ever met brothers? Do you have brothers? Here's the thing about brothers. Brothers have no problem beating each other up. And they also will come to one another's aid in a heartbeat, or maybe faster. Paul writes, this is what the Christian life looks like, this brotherly affection. You know how brothers care for one another. You know how deeply it goes, that it is more than just, hey, we happen to be related by blood. No, there's something more than that. This is why many of us can have brothers who are from another mother. It's not just blood. It is this connection and family that is so much deeper. It says, this is what I desire for you. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly storge, affection. Care for each other's needs and give to each other freely. Now, how do we go about doing this? See, to love one another with brotherly affection does not mean we act like everything is okay all the time. Because oftentimes things are not okay between brothers, between people who just happen to have this familiarity with each other. Oftentimes things are, in fact, disjointed and broken. To love with brotherly affection is to allow our love to be genuine and to desire what's best for them. He goes on, and I believe that the rest of this chapter is him explaining what brotherly affection looks like. How do you love like this? Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, and serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. If you want to become a person of love, it will require of you everything. We cannot become people of love by half-heartedly just going through the motions and hoping it happens. In fact, the reality is the weight of the world around us, the pressures of our sin and other people's sin against us will almost always lead us to be less and less loving by itself. We need assistance and we need purpose. Do not be slothful in zeal, but fervent in spirit. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. How do we love with brotherly affection? We seek to care for one another in our very real and tangible need. We see the need of the person sitting across the table from us or the barista who's serving us the coffee, and we take time to actually care. What is their need here and now? Sometimes it's as simple as a smile or a thank you or even a please when they're really stressed and worn out. Sometimes it's so much deeper than that. It's actually getting to know them outside of their role in serving you. How do we let our love be genuine? We rejoice with those who rejoice. To have brotherly affection, this kind of love for one another, is to know their heart, to know their hurt, to walk with them in their emotions, to care for them when things are really good, to care for them when things are really bad. This is what you and I, as followers of Jesus, are called to be like. Just for a moment, how different would your workplace look if everyone who said they're a Christian loved like this? How different would your family look if when one another has been wronged, you seek to make it right? You seek to forgive and restore and not hold a grudge. How different would your community around where you live look if you sought to care for every daily interaction in a meaningful way? How do I show that this person, whatever their role, whatever their job, because they're familiar to me, this person matters? How do you begin to see Christ in and through everything around you? C.S. Lewis, he wrote a book about these four loves, and as he talks about affection, he describes perhaps what I think is the most beautiful thing about this type of love. See, often we assume we have to love the people who are like us. In fact, most of the time when we seek out associations of people, we seek out the people who share the same values and the same vision, who look like us, who act like us, who think like us. We generally want to be friends with ourselves most of the time. But C.S. Lewis, when he talks about this type of love, he notes that this type of love is actually really beautiful because it's not about who's like you, it's actually about who's simply around you. Here's what he says: the special glory of affection is that it can unite those who most emphatically, even comically, are not. People who, if they had not found themselves put down by fate in the same household or community, would have had nothing to do with each other. He goes on to write about how odd it is to have a love for people who are nothing like you. In fact, when you have this kind of love, you find that the oddest of people, the most strange and most bizarre, are actually the most important in your daily walk. See, to love with brotherly affection is not to look for a world that looks or thinks or acts like you. It's not to look for a world that believes or votes or behaves the way you do. It's not even to look for a world who likes the same football team as you. It's okay if Alabama fans and Florida fans and Georgia fans join us in this place. Did you know that? They would have nothing in common with us, perhaps, except Jesus. It is okay if Republicans and Democrats love one another. Did you know that? This brotherly love means it's okay for those who are really, really into conspiracy theories and those who are not to be together in the same place and to care for each other. For those who are married with kids and single and gay. For those who have nothing else in common in any way except that they happen to be placed in the same community, the same neighborhood, the same workplaces, not by our choosing, but by God's act of mercy. God surrounds us with people who are not like us so that we can love them. And this kind of love loves by seeking to show hospitality, by looking for those around you with eyes that are open to see, what do they need? And how can I give? How can I care with all of who I am, that they may be bettered because of me in their life? And the beautiful thing about all of these types of love is every one of them, even Storge, which is only barely mentioned in the Bible, is used as a comparison for how we relate to God. There's a reason why God is called Father. Like a father, he loves his children. He has placed us in a family. There's a reason why the most common name to give to Christians in the New Testament is brothers and sisters. They are called as a family not because they're all alike or they're all blood, but because Christ has united those who were once really different. Because he has taken those who were once far off and the outcasts, the tax collectors and the prostitutes, the sinners like me and even like you, and he's brought us all into one community. And he's placed us here to love genuinely with this deep affection of family. All four of these point us to God. And just as we have been adopted as sons and called brothers and co-heirs with Christ, we too can see those who rub us the wrong way, who get under our skin, who are the exact opposite of who we think they should be or who we think we should be. And we can invite them in to something better. So this is the beautiful thing about understanding what love is. You and I only become more loving when we gaze upon Christ and all of his love, and we see just how far he would go for you and me. It makes going that little bit extra for our barista or our neighbor or our boss that much more manageable. Because you are loved, you're able to love. Because he cares for you like family, he will give you everything you need to care for others who have wronged you, to love those and bless those who persecute you, to give of yourself when there's very little to give. And maybe sometimes he'll even give you enough to give of himself when you have nothing left to give. Will you pray with me? God, you have called us to love one another with brotherly affection. The beautiful thing is, it's not about being united with similarities, but being centered in your love. You have called us to show hospitality, to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Teach us to see everybody in our surrounding community, those that we interact with daily and those who drive us nuts. May we see them as you do, as children of God, in need of love. May we care for them, whatever it takes, that we may become more and more a people of love, that we may be united not by our commonalities, but by you, by your grace and your mercy and your love for us. Lord, may we walk with you in every step of the way. Pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. As we continue our worship this morning, we continue by collecting an offering Here in this place, we believe an offering is an invitation to join God in the work that He's doing. We believe that through us as the people and us as the church organization together, we are in our community making a difference, loving and serving others. And so when we give an offering in this place, we believe it's an invitation to say, God, I'm excited for what you're doing, and I want to be a part of it. So if you call this your church home and you came prepared to give today, if you prefer to do so with cash or check, you can do so by placing that in the little envelopes in front of you and then in the black box in the back. If you are here for the very first time and maybe as you were just sitting and waiting or talking, you notice those little cards in front of you that are teal that say connect at the top. We would love to pray with you this week and pray for whatever you're going through. If you would like to connect with us or have us connect with you during the week, you can fill those out and place those in the offering box as well. And if you're somebody who prefers to do everything electronically, you can both fill out that Connect card and give online at thepointknox.com by clicking the little teal button in the bottom corner. However you give and whatever you give, know this. We don't give to get God's love, but because we already have it. Thank you.